In this video, we're going to set it up so when we click the mouse button, boing, the ball goes flying off into the distance. Okay, let's get started. Okay, we're going to have two methods in our update method. One will be locking the ball to the paddle, and the other will be telling the ball to launch up in the air. We currently have our code for locking the ball. So what I'll do is highlight that, right-click, quick actions and refactorings, extract the method. So we'll create this same code. You could also just copy and paste, but we'll create this same code as a new method, and we'll call this method lock ball to paddle. Okay, so this helps us see in our update nice and quickly what's going on. Oh, we're doing a lock ball to paddle thing, and we're also going to do what's our other thing we're going to do? Thing's not technically the term we use. Method would be the term, Rick, not thing. But the other thing / method we're going to do is launch ball on mouse click. We don't even need to say ball, do we? Because it's obviously the ball. Launch on mouse click. Okay, brackets and semicolon. Now that doesn't exist yet, so we're getting the red squiggly line. If we right-click, quick actions and refactorings, and that will produce a new method, private void launch on mouse click, with some placeholder throw exception that will delete the placeholder. Now, what is it that we need to say about launch on mouse click? Well, first of all, we need to figure out what it means to click the button. So we'll have a look at the documents over here. We know that there's a get mouse button down, and it's input.get mouse button down. So if I highlight that and copy, and just a quick note before I jump back to the script, we can see in the description here that it's looking for a value. We need to pass in a value, int button. Int is an integer. It means it will be a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And it says that button 0 is the primary button, often the left button. So yeah, we want to use the left button. That's what people will be expecting that we pass in there. So copy input.get button mouse down, get mouse button down. Say that 100 times fast. Okay, and then on launch on mouse click, we're going to say if brackets input.get mouse button down, and then we need to pass in, so open brackets, put in a 0. That represents the left mouse button, close brackets, and then close brackets again around our entire input.get mouse button down. New line, open our curly braces. What will we have in here? Well, we basically want to push the ball. And the way we do that is we need to access the ball's rigid body component. We'll have a look at our ball over here. Click on the ball. If it will let me, gonna have a little bit of thinking here. Okay, click on the ball. And you can see that our ball has, if I finally click on the ball, there we go, a number of components. One of them is the rigid body. This is what pushes the ball around. This is what has it move. This is what has it respond to physics and gravity and all that kind of good stuff. And so we need to access this component that is on the ball. Now we need to do it differently to the way that we accessed the transform component. Looking at our script, do we have it in the script here? Yes, we do. The transform.position, all we needed to say was transform dot, and we were accessing the component. If I mouse over here, it's accessing the transform component. That was all we needed to do, and it's a little bit of an anomaly when it comes to components on Unity, because every single game object has the transform component. It's not making us work to get at that component, but the other components, like this rigid body 2D, we need to say get component of type rigid body 2D. So the way we write that down in our launch on mouse click method, we're going to write get component, and then open, what are these called? Angle brackets, angle braces? Yes, angle brackets, I think. And within here, we type rigid body, capital R, 2D. So rigid body 2D. And we need to have open and close brackets. We're not passing in anything. Dot velocity. And you can see under once we get the component, you can see all the different things that the rigid body 2D component would allow us to then access. And in our instance, we're accessing velocity. And we want to say that the velocity is a new vector2. Why are we doing that? Well, the vector2 is going to give us an x and y value. And so we're saying the component of this, instead of sitting there having 0, because while the ball is sitting there doing nothing, it's got 0 velocity, we want to say have a velocity, and that velocity needs to be a vector2, because we need to tell it x and y. So we say new vector2, and we will pass in the values, just for a starting point, we'll say 2f. So the x, we want it to go a little bit to the right. If we have a look in our screen here, we don't want it to go immediately straight up because the player wants to be able to bounce it around things and get up to the top. So a little bit to the right, and we want it to be going upwards with, we'll say 10F, or maybe even 15. Just, I don't know how fast that will be, but we'll say 15F. Okay, so just in here, we've accessed the rigid body component, rigid body 2D component. We're looking at the velocity, so we're accessing the velocity of the rigid body 2D, and we're giving it a new vector. We're giving it a force upwards and to the right a little bit. So let's save that, jump back over into Unity, and see what happens. A little bit of forewarning, it's not going to be exactly what we want, but we'll see what's happening here. If we click play, we can move the mouse around, and when we click, nothing is happening. Well, let's have a look at our code and figure out why that's the case. If we look at our update method here, that's happening every frame, we're saying lock the ball to the paddle, and then we're saying if you click the button, then launch the ball. But on every single frame, we're then saying, oh, no, hang on, lock the ball again. So we need a way of saying once the ball has been launched, we don't need to lock the ball anymore because it's been launched and it is game on. Okay, and we'll come back and serialize these values after we've done our challenge. It's not good form to leave these numbers baked in there, but we'll get to those in a moment because I want to give you the challenge, which is to make sure we can launch the ball. So let's have a look at the challenge here. Make the ball launch. This is a little bit of a deeper challenge. First of all, create a new variable of type bool, and I've called mine has started, so if you want to call yours the same to keep it consistent. So up the top of the script, create a new bool, has started, initialize it as false, and then change that to true after we've clicked. And then finally, to wrap our two methods that we have in start, it's actually in update. Let me change this on the fly. In update. Okay, back to our presentation here. Bonk, bonk, donk. Diddling. Okay, wrap our two methods in update with an if statement that checks if has started is not true. So in other words, if has started is not true, then we should be able to do to call those methods. But if has started is true, then we shouldn't be able to do anything within our update. We shouldn't be able to lock the paddle or click again. Okay, so there's your challenge. Take some time, dig into that, and I will see you back here when you're done. Rightio, the first thing we're going to do is create our bool. It's a state, because we're either has started or we're not has started. It's a state, and it will be bool has started equals false, initialized as false. Okay, now what we want to say in our update method here is if has started, so if we want to say it's not true, in our parentheses here we say exclamation mark, that means not. So if not has started, so that's another way of saying if you haven't started yet, but if not has started, then we'll wrap these lock ball to paddle and launch on mouse click. We'll indent them so it's all nice and arranged. So if has started is false, then lock the ball to the paddle and launch on mouse click if we do the mouse click. Otherwise, if has started is true, then we can't do those particular things. And now we need to put in another line under the launch on mouse click, because this is where we know whether we've started or not. So once we've pushed the button, once we've pushed our mouse button, then we want to say has started equals true. Let's save that up, jump back over into Unity, click on play and see if we can make this work. Okay, left and right and then click, bloink, there we go, and the ball lobs up into the air. Fantastic, exactly what we wanted. And then before we finish, I'll take these values that I've got baked into my code here and we'll serialize those up the top of our script under configuration parameters. We'll say serialize field. This will be a float. And the first float will be, let's see, we'll call this, it's on the x-axis and it's velocity. So x push, I'm going to call it, because it's our push that we want to have off the paddle, equals, we'll initialize that at 2f. And then we will do a second one. Actually, I'll just cheat a little bit, copy and paste. And this will be y push. Why not? That's the question. And we'll make this 15f. And then back down within launch on mouse click, we find our new vector 2, and it will be instead x push, comma, y push. Save. Have a look at how this works. Click on play. left, right, all good. Push, that's great. And we've got our variables down here that if we wanted to, we can play around with those and manipulate those so that we can have different amount of push. Great stuff. Just to recap, we have created ourselves 2 methods here, lock the ball to paddle and launch on mouse click. And we're making sure that if the player has not yet started the game, then yes, you can call those methods. But once the player has launched the ball, we don't want them to be able to, or we don't want the system to lock the ball to the paddle anymore. So we've created our bool that says you cannot do these things if you've already started the game. So great work, and I'll see you in an upcoming lecture.